Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Straight Up Show podcast. I am your host, Calvin. And today, we have been, this whole season, actually, we've been talking about just immigration and things going on. And if you've been living under a rock, you know that immigration has definitely been one of the main focuses of 2025, as we're recording this in 2025. And under the current administration of Donald Trump, a lot has been going on. And as we have recorded this podcast today, something happened over the weekend to where birthright citizenship is now in jeopardy, or it has been. So we're going to get a little bit more about that. But today, this is a follow-up episode. We had a previous immigration lawyer on the podcast, and we do get feedback from the podcast and the things we talk about. But today, man, she came on, she killed it, was very informational. And we had to have her back because she's been being not only on social media, but in the courtrooms, in her offices in Florida and in Chicago. So today's guest is no other than the one and only immigration attorney, Carla Casas. Carla, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast today.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be back so soon again.
All right. And so, like, just for people who don't know you and know, like, what you've go through, and we know you as an immigration lawyer, but for those who didn't listen to the first part of the episode, tell us who you are and where you're from.
Sure. So I'm Carla Casas. I am actually an immigrant myself. I was born in Peru, and my family immigrated to the U.S. when I was 4 years old. I've been through the process myself in terms of getting my green card and then becoming a citizen in my 20s. And now I am helping other individuals who are immigrants. My practice is solely focused on U.S. immigration and nationality law. We work primarily with families. So we have a lot of mixed status families where maybe one spouse is a U.S. citizen, the other one is undocumented, or maybe they have children or parents who are undocumented. We also do a lot of humanitarian cases, and this is for immigrants who have been victims of crimes, victims of trafficking. There are special visas that you can apply for if you've been a victim. And then I also represent individuals who are being deported. Right now, I'm doing a lot of detained cases, people that have been detained by ICE. And so there's a whole process for that as well. And so that really is my focus at this point. I've got two offices, as you mentioned, Orlando and Chicago. I've got a wonderful team, and we're working hard right now because, as you all know, things are getting tough in the area of immigration law.
I wish personally I could just give y'all a big hug because what are y'all doing right now? It's definitely impacting the world. And this podcast that you came on previously this season, it got a lot of great reviews, and definitely met with some, conservative criticisms and stuff like that. And they just and we're going to talk about the impact of the episode that you were on. First off, I did tag you in a comment that talked about our email that I got, a personal email from a media company. They watched the episode, they were kind of thrilled about it, and I tagged you in it, and you reposted it. Thank you. But when you saw that email that I got, and how did that make you feel knowing that your episode that you were on made like a good impact on people who watched it or listened to it?
It never gets old. It warms my heart. One of my main missions is, aside from obviously I represent individuals, but I think knowledge is power. And I am very, very passionate about informing the community. And so anytime that I get good feedback like that and people tell me, that was helpful, that was useful, I love that, because right now knowledge is really, people need that. They need to know their rights. That is the only way I hope they have protecting themselves, because we can't really trust the government right now in terms of agents aren't. And I can say this from personal experience because I represent clients. They tell me what the ICE agents have told them, and they usually don't tell them the truth, unfortunately. They tell them you don't have a right to anything, you don't have a right to be released, and that's not the case for everyone. There are some people that's true for, but not everyone. So I think, to the extent that I can get the information out there, that could potentially save someone to be able to stay in this country if they know what their rights are and what steps they can take to be able to stay here.
Your story in itself is inspirational. You're from Peru, you came here, you're basically the American dream. And a lot of people have, had their own opinions about immigration, and and like I said, you just, not to be too political, just if we really want to be, technical, it's like, Hispanic and Latinos are indigenous people, and they kind of been here first, So there's that adage of like, hey, this is you can't tell us to go on stolen land. With that
Right.
being said, even though that was a good episode, there was some criticism, especially in the inbox and stuff like that. And you yourself talked about just dealing with criticism from being a immigration lawyer. One of the criticisms I had from somebody who was very far right said that, immigration lawyers are basically disobeying the law and they're trying to tell people how to cheat the law. So when you hear things like that, you're not complying with Donald Trump's orders. How do you address these things? And when people say, hey, you're not following the orders, or immigration lawyers are just trying to help these criminals, quote unquote, cheat the system?
Well, I guess the first thing is, we're not even starting on the same premise, because to the extent people say they're all criminals, no, they are not all criminals. I am fully in support of the individuals who have committed crimes and are deportable, and they have not shown they're rehabilitated. There are laws that need to be enforced, and I think I want everyone else to be safe as well. But I think right now what we're seeing is a violation of our actual laws, of people's rights, and that's a big problem. So as an immigration attorney, my job is to use the law, the Immigration and Nationality Act, which was created specifically for this purpose, to, if the person has an avenue to be able to get a green card, to become a citizen just like I did, to be able to get them on that avenue. That's why we have those laws. It would be the same as saying that a criminal attorney is just helping their clients commit crimes. No, a criminal attorney is there to be able to, represent their client, to make sure that they have full representation during our hearing, that there's due process, and that if there is something that needs to be something in their benefit, if they need to, if they are innocent, for example, the whole purpose is for them to have full representation. And so I think, with regard to that comment, I am doing my job as an attorney using our laws to be able to help people gain status, become. That's what attorneys do. And in fact, my concern right now is with this administration that is not obeying the laws, that is violating people's rights. ICE agents are bursting into people's homes without warrants. They are, crashing car doors, snatching up people based solely on how they look. And now we're talking about racial profiling. So those are my concerns. I mean, and as an attorney, I'm here to try to protect my clients from that. Absolutely.
You are a bona fide superhero and, just using the law. And like, I love hearing your story and other immigration lawyers, like our friend Cynthia Santiago in California, who all of y'all have been through this process and you have your reason of getting into immigration law. I'm not for sure if you're familiar with what's going on right now here in Vegas. It's the FBI is now getting involved, but I'm not for sure if you saw it on my, we had a podcast episode about it last week. And
Mhm.
it was about a girl who went to an ICE protest. She's Latina. She's born in California. She was live streaming this on TikTok, right? And she was leaving the scene, and all of a sudden, like the cop instigated the conversation, and the person she was with, he says, "Hey, how about you do your oath? Leave us alone." And basically, the cop charged at them, 16 of them, and 16 cops charged at them, arrested them, and then basically arrested them for being out of a curfew, basically. And then so
Mhm.
she was arrested for unlawfully. But what happened was they put on her under her citizenship unknown, and even though they had all her information, they
Yeah.
put unknown under her citizenship. So, as a lawyer, how does that make you feel, and what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, that is something that we were all afraid it was going to start happening, right? The moment that one person doesn't have their rights respected, we're all at risk. So now we're talking about, and I think this is happening. I mean, there's been several instances of U.S. citizens being detained. Of course, the majority are brown, right? These are not white U.S. citizens. But that is the problem with, randomly, just based on, basically racially profiling people. And that's what we're seeing a lot. And I think that's obviously very problematic. And that puts not just immigrants at risk, but everybody at risk. Because eventually, like, it's a very slippery slope. Once law enforcement is able to just do whatever they want with following the steps that they're required to take and without violating people's rights, then we've got problems and everyone's at risk, not just those individuals.
Man, see, that's just why we have her on the podcast. Hey, y'all stick around. We're going to have a little bit more with Carla Casas, immigration lawyer. She has been on the podcast. She's been doing great. And we're going to have a little bit more with her on the other side of the break. Make sure you stay tuned to the Straight Up Show podcast.
I think straight up means to be able to speak in a way that is straight up, to be honest, and to speak your truth.
Raw, uncut, you know what I mean? It's blunt, straight to the point. This is what it is.
It's just a place to be open and honest, and that's what I appreciate most about it. And it provides a place for community members to come together and just be straight up with each other about things that are going on in the world, because it affects all of us.
Unfiltered, raw, with all the cursing that Calvin does.
Straight up is just being real, telling it like it is, being you.
Being solid, being who you are, no matter what it is, no matter what situation you're faced with. Right, this is who you are. It really speaks to me, saying it is what it is and it ain't what it ain't. Straight up.
Our world is made up of roughly 8 billion people. People of different races, different cultures, and different languages. And sometimes being different is often frowned upon due to a number of things. But here at Straight Up, we believe it's our job as people to sit at the table, learn from each other, in hopes of making our world into a better place to live. So join us as we have these cultural conversations. Only on the Straight Up Show podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Straight Up Show podcast. I am your host, Calvin. Today, we're talking all things immigration. This is a follow-up episode to our episode with Carla Casas, immigration lawyer out of Orlando and Chicago. And she has definitely been killing the game. She's definitely been representing, and she's definitely using her power as an immigration attorney to help those who have been in the same shoes she's been in. So once again, today, my guest is Carla Casas. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here today.
Hey, and like I said, you've been doing a great job, and like I said, you and your offices, plural, have been busy. Y'all have been going this whole year. 2025 has been probably one of the busiest years, I would assume, in your career.
Yes.
But just this past weekend, there was a bombshell, and no, I'm not familiar with the law. I'm not too familiar with the Constitution, which I feel like a bad American. But the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship, that just passed. And so for those who don't know, what just happened this past weekend and how critical is it to the immigration process?
So the Supreme Court issued its ruling related to birthright citizenship. Now, the one thing is, I think there's some confusion about what the decision is. So they did not address the issue of whether Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship is constitutional. So they didn't decide on that. What they did say is that right now there are several states that immediately filed lawsuits, right, to make sure that this executive order didn't go into effect. And Illinois, for example, is one of the states covered under this. And those federal judges, those injunctions, the injunction is to stop the order from taking an effect. Those applied to the whole country. And so basically the Supreme Court justices said that's not correct. Those injunctions should not apply to the entire country. They should only apply to the plaintiffs. Illinois is covered, Washington State. There's about 22 states that have their own injunctions. But now the other states that were not involved, the executive order could take effect in those states. For example, Florida, where I have my other office, in Florida, this executive order could take effect in the next 30 days. The court did say we're going to pause it for another 30 days, but after that point, the government could go ahead and restart, that executive order, apply that executive order in those states, which would mean that we would have a patchwork of laws, basically, that a child born in Illinois is still considered a U.S. citizen and can get a U.S. birth certificate and a Social Security and all that stuff, and a child born in Florida would not. And I don't even know what exactly they would be considered, like which parent citizen. I mean, this is where we get into a mess of a situation, because none of that is clear right now in terms of what exactly does that mean for these kids who are going to be born in the next 30 days, after the next 30 days. So basically, it's very problematic. I think what this is going to cause is that there's going to be hundreds of lawsuits now filed individually all over the place, right? Because now that these injunctions that we have don't apply to the whole country, now we have a whole bunch of states that are not protected anymore. And again, children born in those states are not going to be considered citizens under the executive order. So it's going to be a big mess, basically, at this point.
And this is going to cause more for mass deportations, right? Like
it's just adding to all of the chaos we already have. We already are dealing with, yes, mass deportation is happening. People are indiscriminately being, removed, being detained. And then on top of that, now we're going to have another big issue, because this is going to cause there to be a lot of lawsuits, and that's going to further clog up the system. And it's really messy. So I think it was a bad decision. It's going to cause a lot more litigation, a lot of just uncertainty in the meantime. I like I said, I have clients in Florida, and they've already called me, of course, the moment they heard this. Like, I have one woman who's going to give birth in the next couple months, and she's like, what's going to happen? And really, I don't have answers. I'm like, well, we have to wait and see. For the next 30 days, nothing's going to happen. But after that, in the states that are not protected by an injunction, yes, that could take effect, and we'll have to see what the government does. I'm guessing they are going to right away start directing the agencies in those states not to issue birth certificates, et cetera. But there's really nothing we can do preemptively, like with regard to this client. I was like, let's just wait and see. We'll let you know as soon as we have more information. But right now, there's nothing we can do about that.
It's so backwards. Like, especially as a journalist, I don't know how to even. I'm confused. Like I don't even. And is it hard to not? I'm pretty sure as a lawyer, you have to be apolitical, right? Especially as a journalist, to be apolitical and not, you're doing it for the job, not about what you believe in, right? Is it coming to a time to where it's hard to be apolitical when it comes to doing your job?
It's really hard, because I have to say this administration is causing so much chaos, so much pain. I have a client right now who, thankfully, we had his bond hearing. He was detained I think I mentioned him during the last podcast. He's from Senegal.
Senegal, yeah.
He's fighting, and he has an asylum case pending in immigration court. And 3 weeks ago, going on 4 weeks ago now, as he was leaving his court hearing, he had already had one scheduled for next year. They had given him another year to prepare, etc. He was picked up by ICE. He wasn't told why he was being detained. He was taken to Louisiana, a detention center in Louisiana, and that's where he's been detained. And then we had his hearing on this past Tuesday. And fortunately, I was able to convince the judge that he was unlawfully detained and he should have a right to be released. And so the judge said the bond was for $2,000. And he's going to be released. However, it's like every step of the way, there's roadblocks, right? Because then his wife went ahead and paid the bond online, because now ICE allows you to pay the bond. Before, you had to go in person to the office. So she paid it. And then she calls me the next day and she's like, they're telling me that they're so overwhelmed. They haven't even processed the payment yet. Because of course we want to get him out as soon as possible. This man has been, and the conditions are horrible. I don't know. We actually had a New York Times reporter reach out to us on Friday. There was an article that was published on Saturday, I believe, New York Times, where they were talking about the various detention centers and the horrific conditions that people are living in. Overcrowding, no beds to sleep in, not enough water, spoiled food, just all sorts of things. And so the goal for me is always to get the client released as soon as possible, because I would hate for one of my clients to suffer more pain or to die, God forbid, in the detention center. So anyway, we were on top of them, but it's so frustrating, because she was like paying the bond immediately as soon as we left court. And then the next day it was still in process. And, we've sent emails, and I'm assuming by now he has been released. I'm still waiting to hear confirmation, but I know obviously she's caught up with what's going on with him, trying to get him back. She'd already bought a plane ticket for him to fly back. But I am seeing it from the first row. And I have to say, it is incredibly maddening. It's very difficult to remain, neutral about this, because I can say that this administration is causing so much pain that I'm seeing firsthand, to my clients.
I think my argument is that I'm faith based. I'm from the South, very faith based, and I'm what's my motto? I'm like Christ, but with I'm like Christ, but with a little bit of spice. You know what I mean? And because I'm still a homeboy at the end of the day, and like Christ, but a little bit of spice. I watched this Iranian preacher see his one of his members get arrested by ICE, and his wife. You saw that one, and she had a seizure.
Yes, I did.
And sorry, so what you say?
I was saying, I remember him saying, and I felt the same way for my client who, fled his country. He was being tortured over there. And then he comes here and gets detained. And, he made a comment, I think, throughout as they were detaining her. He was saying, we fled Iran for this reason. Now, again, we're feeling persecuted and you're going to detain her. And, and it's just terrible. It's so re-traumatizing, I feel, especially for clients who have fled because of persecution in their own country.
I'm Black, and I'm American. I've been born here. And I think that what is messed up for me and how I'm thinking about it, and whether you're Black or white, we are privileged people. We are privileged people. And, my grandma had to be here during civil rights, and she couldn't vote as a woman, and she couldn't vote as a Black person. And now to see Obama get into office, et cetera, the history. So not having lived through the civil rights era, to being comfortable now, to now basically seeing a brand new birth of the civil rights era within the Hispanic community, it's like, how can you look at this and not have a heart? Like, how can you look at this and not, sympathize what's going on? Because when I saw that, man, I can't say it doesn't get to me, because it does. Here's we have Carla Casas. She's been through this process before. She's doing it now, and now it's hard for her too. So that's why it's hard for me to understand how people are voting for this or voting against it, whatever. Getting back to just the birthright citizenship and these new laws that have been passed, you do represent people in Florida. Well, you're an immigration lawyer. You can represent anybody in the nation, but you have an office in Florida. What does it mean? Because I saw that a bunch of Haitians that also passed too. What's the laws about the Haitians that happened? Because Florida is known for having a lot of Haitians. So what does that mean now with that rule that happened with the Haitians?
Yeah, so for Haitians, they had temporary protected status, which is something that the Secretary of Homeland Security can designate a country for TPS. Usually it happens when there's, war going on in the country, or there was like a hurry or some natural disaster. And the idea is we're not going to send these people back to that mess. We're going to allow them to stay temporarily. It's not a green card, it's a temporary. But for TPS for Haitians was just terminated. I don't have usually it's a certain date when it will be terminated. I don't know the exact date, but I know it has been. The administration has indicated they are terminating it. So that means that, similar to what happened to Venezuelans, because their TPS was also terminated, the Haitians who are here on TPS are going to, like pulling the rug out from under them. They're no longer protected. They no longer have status. And so they are subject to deportation, and the government, I guess, is assuming they're all or hoping that they're all going to self-deport, like take themselves, return to their country on their own. The reality is most people are here because the circumstances are so bad in their own countries. They're not going to return. And so again, they are going to be subject to more deportations. We're just going to have more deportations once those individuals don't have status anymore.
Last question before we go to a break. If you've watched our previous episode, we talked about Carlene Martinez, and we just discussed it before the last break. And we talked about just how she was unlawfully arrested while TikTok streaming. And, she gave, Carlene was just innocent. She was just there, watching, and they changed her status to unknown under citizenship under her arrest record. Say if she's a U.S. citizen and she did get arrested by ICE, if the U.S. citizen, because I don't know if it has happened to you yet that you had to deal with a U.S. citizen. Like, one, could you represent a U.S. citizen if they are detained by ICE? And two, should they get deported? What would be the next steps for a U.S. citizen? Or do you even have the answers for that now? Because it's such like a unknown right now.
Yeah, I have had situations in the past, and it's primarily been Latinos. I remember years ago before I opened my own practice, I volunteered as a volunteer attorney with the National Immigrant Justice Center, which is a wonderful nonprofit in Chicago. And I remember when I was with them, there was an individual who was a U.S. citizen. He was Latino. He didn't speak that well. And so he was detained for, I don't know, a few weeks. I mean, it was a substantial period of time. Number one, an individual who that happens to, I'm sure would probably have a pretty good lawsuit against the government for unlawful detainment, civil rights violations, etc. If a person was actually deported, I mean, I haven't had that happen. I know it has happened, but I haven't had that happen myself. But absolutely, they have a right to come back. The fact that they were unlawfully deported doesn't change that they're a U.S. citizen. I don't know exactly what the avenue would be, but I mean, this is their country, regardless of what ICE says. If they get it wrong, and again, they would have an even bigger civil rights lawsuit if they actually are removed from the country unlawfully when they are a citizen. So that's incredibly problematic. I had heard rumblings about this, what you mentioned about this happening with people with Latino surnames, that they are somehow messing with the information on their, the records. And it's honestly made me, even as an attorney, but I was not born here. I naturalized to become a citizen. And I actually was thinking I need to order a passport card because, I don't carry my passport book around with me. And so I'm actually planning to do that, to be able to at least have that in my wallet, that I can carry around, because it's frightening. It's frightening. The things that we are seeing, like I never thought that this kind of thing could happen here. But it's happening. It's definitely frightening.
It sounds crazy, but my thing is, and this sounds, we're straight up, right? We're being straight up. Like it's mostly Hispanics right now, but like we talked about Haitians too, and so it doesn't matter. These people are going after everybody. So like if you're from Louisiana, but unfortunately I have a slave master's last name. But the people who are in Southern Louisiana, they have like Thibodeau and like these different like Cajun French names, which, hey y'all, it's Creole, Haitian. So don't act like this can't happen to you too. So when it's hey, it's their fight, no, it's kind of all our fights too. So just be vigilant, be very careful. Hey, we're going to have a little bit more with Carla Casas. We're answering some of your questions that you had about immigration. Make sure you stay tuned to the Straight Up Show podcast.
Votación es un derecho, un privilegio y una responsabilidad. Muchos han hecho el máximo sacrificio solo para que podamos tener la capacidad de votar sobre lo que creemos que es mejor para nosotros y nuestra comunidad. Así que aquí en Straight Up te pedimos que investigues, deja que tu voz sea escuchado y que estés orgulloso de decir I straight up votó.
It's Monday, and you know what that means. A new artist hits the Straight Up stage for another edition of Music Monday. Tune in to hear talented music artists from all over the world. Artists like Victoria Silk and Jonathan Valenzuela. Come experience some of the best that music has to offer and see why fans want more. Artists like the Rap Assassin 5. It's Music Monday only on the Straight Up Show podcast. Are you an up-and-coming artist and would like your music to be featured on the show? Don't wait. Send us a message right now.
Everybody out there, I'm Sultan Salahuddin from Southside. Season 3 is out right now on HBO Max. Make sure you tune in. And make sure you tune in to the Straight Up Podcast Show whenever you are online. Peace.
Welcome back to the Straight Up Show podcast. I am your host, Calvin. Today, we are having a important conversation about immigration. And within the past times of recording this right now, whenever you listen to this podcast, at this present time in the United States of America, we are going through just daily changes when it comes to not only immigration policies, but to our very own Constitution. Today we have special guest immigration attorney Carla Casas, Abogada Casas. I said it right today. I got it right today.
Carla Casas, yes.
I just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast today. You've been doing phenomenal work. Just I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to share some information. That's huge for me. The fact that more people can hear, advice and kind of better prepare themselves, that helps me in my mission as well. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. And you talked about getting your passport. So you have been nationalized and you've been through the process legally. Okay, let's start 2-part question, right? One, what's your concern about getting your passport now? You mentioned, let's kind of go in more detail why you want to go ahead and get that. That's for one. And two, for those having their social security number, would that be a quick way for them to hurry up and get a passport in an emergency situation like this or no?
So the first thing is what I want to get is the passport card. I do have the passport book, but I don't carry that with me. Like I think few people carry their passport book with them. And if I were to be detained and I don't know, in some crazy situation, I want to be able to at least have something on me, because things are getting crazy. I mean, yes, I'm an attorney and I know my rights and all of that, but ICE doesn't really seem to be respecting people's rights right now. So I'm not immune just because I'm a lawyer. So with respect to that, you can order the card. It looks like an ID, like a driver's license, and it's proof of citizenship. And then that way you can have that in your wallet. I think for people who are listening, who, are concerned about that, I think that's a good idea because again, carrying your passport around is not the best. The second question is, so any person who is a US citizen should already most likely has a social security number. If for some reason they haven't requested it, they can request it. You just show that you're a US citizen. Anyone really here with status can request a social security number if you're here, if you have a green card, if you're what's called a legal permanent resident, or if you're heard like on a visa, on a work visa, then you would also need a social security number. So in terms of that, a citizen should already most likely has a social security number. Usually as, when they're the first time that you want to get a job, I think sometimes people get it earlier, when your child is born, I think you usually do want to get a number assigned. For example, if you are, and my area is not Texas, so I don't want to go too far into that, but I know that there's child tax credits, and I think you need a social security number for your child to be able to, qualify for that. And you can, request the same way as you would request the passport book. You can also order instead, or in addition, the passport card that you could more easily carry with you in your wallet as an additional proof of citizenship.
Not for sure if I hit it, you answer or not, but as an immigration attorney, are you able to represent a U.S. citizen when it comes to them being deported or obtained by ICE? There's a law. Are the laws different when that happens, or?
I mean, I could absolutely. That would be a way to, for example, very quickly get somebody released if they're detained by ICE. If we can prove that they're a U.S. citizen, whether it's showing their birth certificate or, so in the past, I haven't had, because it wasn't a thing to have U.S. citizens prove to the government that they are a citizen and make sure they get released as soon as possible, because they should never have been detained. And if we didn't have ICE agents who are out there with a quota pressure, at this point, racially profiling people, these things wouldn't be happening. But this is what happens when you put that sort of pressure on individuals who, a lot of them, maybe are new recruits, maybe don't even have that much experience in immigration because they're hiring new people. And it takes a while. Immigration is such a complicated area of the law. And they are, pressuring these individuals to go out there and detain, large numbers of people. And then that's how we end up in this situation.
If you can only see the racist comments I have right now.
Oh, I can, there's nothing I haven't seen. I think I mentioned to you last time that on one of my Instagram videos, they started attacking me and they were like, someone should look into his lawyer. She might be illegal too. She needs to be deported. I'm like, okay, great. I'm just going to completely not worth my time to respond to that.
It's just like, man, people, it's just not cute anymore. Like, it's just, I think one of the things I loved about when there was a Syrian crisis out here and that Obama was like, hey, all right, America, keep thinking that there won't be a day to where we need the world and the world turned their backs on us. And I'm like, that's kind of how I look at it too. Like, hey, I'm not for sure how ICE works or what their whole process is, but I saw that ICE is running out of money and like just even supporting them and paying the agents itself. What do you think the end game and all this? Like, do you think, because like I said, it's been 6 months into the new administration. Do you think that this whole attack on, because I think it's a distraction from other world things going on right now. It's like
that too.
Empty promises that people can't keep. Because now he's undoing some things or saying that, well, we need the farmers, we need these guys. But what do you think the end game in all this is going to be like? Because like I said, it's been 6 months and I'm pretty sure this has been a tough 6 months for you all. But what do you think the end game in all this is? What's the prize at the end of the day?
I mean, I think a lot of what's happening is, I think the point is to create fear in the community and to have people self-deport. I think that ideally is what they want, people to become so afraid. I see it even when people are detained. The conditions are so bad. And I think their hope is that people will just say, you know what, forget it. I'm not fighting. I'm not going to die here. And I will be honest, I've had some clients. I had one client last week, actually. He's in Florida. He's detained at Chrome Detention Center, which I don't know if you've heard of Chrome, but it's in Miami. There have been several people that have died there. I mean, it's just terrible conditions. And the wife mentioned to me that he was getting sick. I don't know exactly what's wrong with him, but he's sick. And I said to her, look, he's got to make a difficult decision, because even if I'm able to file, and in his case too, we're still trying to figure out if he's even eligible to be released on bond, because anyone who arrived in the last 2 years, if they've been here less than 2 years, the government is arguing they're subject to what's called expedited removal, which means that they don't have the right to see a judge, they don't have the right to request a bond, and they're immediately deported. And there's several factors that would cause a person to be in that situation. So with this client, based on what the wife had told me, I think he is subject to that. But I was requesting some additional information. But in the meantime, when she told me that, I said, look, in my mind, I'm like, I don't want him to die there. Like, it's not worth, so I told her, I said, look, even in best case scenario, this is not immediate. If I have to file a bond motion, it's going to take like 2 weeks for him to get a hearing. So he's not going anywhere immediately. And if he's in a bad condition, there's no guarantee he's going to get treatment there. I don't know, so it's those types of difficult decisions, like heartbreaking decisions that people have to make right now. And so to answer your question, I do think that a big, the plan here, I think, is to make it so uncomfortable that a lot of these people will just self-deport. And there are people that have decided to leave, because it's just, they don't want to deal with this anymore. And there's other people that have chosen not to come. So I think that's part of what they want to do, is just make it so unbearable, so that people will just deport themselves.
I met a gentleman at an event yesterday, 2 days ago, and it's like a social event. And he talked about how he was from the Philippines, and he's here on a green card, and he wants to go home, but he's scared that, he can't come back. So like, it really hasn't been as talked about in the Asian community, but the Asians are scared too. So it's not just the Hispanic community, it's everyone's scared.
Yeah, no, I have clients from all different countries. I don't represent just Latinos. Like I mentioned, my client from Senegal. I have Middle Eastern clients. I've got Asian clients. I've got a client from Laos, the country of Laos. And he was ordered deported many years ago, but Laos won't take their citizens back. So they haven't been able to actually physically deport him. But he's worried that they might still try to deport him somewhere else. So yeah, I'm seeing all sorts of things with clients from different countries. It's not just Hispanic clients, for sure.
And like I said, right now, as it stands, we are streaming live right now. And I've been having like Q&As and things like that, we're answering some of your questions that you have for her. I have one client right now, Frank. He is Frank Salinas. He says, can a DACA resident file for citizenship after they have had DACA status back in 2017 and it is now 2025?
Unfortunately, DACA does not provide a path to citizenship or even to a green card. So with our DACA clients, we have taken other routes. For example, I have DACA clients who are now married to a citizen because DACA has been around for, over 13 years now. So there are other things we can do for DACA, but DACA itself is not going to ever lead, at least at this point, right? The DREAM Act was never passed. So it's not going to lead to a green card. So you've got to find and sometimes there are other avenues. So I would recommend definitely exploring that with with an immigration attorney to see what you can do. But DACA itself is not going to lead you to citizenship.
All right. And Abogada Casas, you talked about just people who have the whole agenda right now is to make people uncomfortable. But there are people who we both know, we both deal with daily. Like I said, even with this podcast, if you had to deal with some of my criticisms and people who have heckled you too. But there are a mass majority of people who are just so comfortable and watching this with popcorn and just praising everything going on right now. Even like using Vanilla Ice as Ice Baby as a theme song for what's going on. If we can be direct, and you as an immigration lawyer, you're on the front lines, seeing everything. You are that person on the front lines. What can you address to those people who are just the hecklers and people who are comfortable that think that even like people who are the Black community, whoever, that just say this is not their fight, this is what is supposed to happen? Like, how can you address them? What message do you have for those people?
Well, first, I'll say it's not their fight until it affects their bottom line or affects them in some way. I actually have some family members, actually, more distant family members who are Trump supporters. And I recall on one occasion, this person has a company and a lot of his employees are Latinos. So once a lot of people started being deported, then he wanted to know, oh my God, what's going on? And, before that, it didn't matter. I think we have to look this like big picture wise. I mean, I agree that I'm not for open borders. The Democrats are not for open borders. There has to be a process, there has to be a way. But at the same time, the solution is not let's deport everybody who's here, no matter how long they've been here, no matter how integrated in our community, no matter how many family members they have. That is also not the solution. That's going to affect, it's a ripple effect. It's going to affect us in so many ways. And in a big way, in terms of like certain industries, that's going to hit all of us. If we pull out a huge percentage of the workforce, like how is that going to affect? It's going to affect all of us. There's no doubt about that. And I do want to make another comment. I think a lot of this, because yes, I've seen the hate. I get a lot of the hate as well when I do videos on Instagram, TikTok, and I just, like I said, I ignore it. But, I think it makes it a lot easier to not care when you don't see that person as an equal human to you. And I think even just the basic calling them illegals, I don't ever use that term because to me, a human being is not illegal, right? They may have violated immigration laws, just like people might violate traffic laws. They might, commit a crime. That doesn't make them illegal. And so I don't ever use that term. I refer to them as undocumented, but even just something as basic as that, it's no different than during World War II, the Jews, right? There came a point when people did not see them they're not equal to us. They're rats. They would portray them as rodents. And that makes it a lot easier to not care. But you have to, look at yourself and think, why does this not bother me? Really deep within yourself, why are you not affected by these individuals being torn apart from their families, being beat on the street, why don't you care? I think that says a lot about you as a person, quite honestly. There's people that I'm never going to convince. And at this point, honestly, I just choose my battles. When I meet people, sorts, right? There's some people that they just don't know. They don't understand the system. They've been fed a lot of lies. But the moment I start talking to them and sharing my own personal experience, whether myself or with my clients, they're open to hearing. Right. And a lot of times they'll see things differently. So I think a lot of it is misinformation. Some of it is just people not being informed. I think that's ignorance to the topic. But then there's also those that there's nothing I'm going to do about the fact that they see them as illegal and they don't care. And I'm never going to change their mind. And to them, they're not a human. They're not equal. They're not the same. You know what I mean? And there's nothing I can do about that. And I'm not going to try. It's just not even worth it. I just focus, on what I'm trying to do, the people that I'm trying to help, the people whose lives I affect.
And that's great to say it. And that's, hey, if y'all listen, that's what you should do. Don't engage with these people. And I got a lot of friends that love engaging with people on TikTok and have these debates, but I'm like, man, it's a waste. They're hell bent on their ways. And I think, and this is me being me, but I really think that it's popular to be racist now. It's popular to hate some people now. And this is my motto. And it's kind of like you think about what the color of the MAGA hat is, right? It's red. And, so it's a hat red. The hat is red. So if you put hat and red together, what does it spell? Hatred. So, and it's just like, to me, it's a symbol of hate, and like it's a red that's hat that's red. And like, it's just hatred. And I hate to see that, and it's just now that we have people who have these internal thoughts that now have a loudspeaker to speak on these things, and I think that it's best of us. We know those who can sympathize with human beings because this country is not flawed at all. It's very flawed. We have one of the greatest sins in the history of this country, taking over indigenous land and bringing slaves. And that's just the history of the country. And, we've prevailed. We had some victories here, but now this is a brand new fight. And this is a fight that people like Carla Casas has been fighting for a long time and spending God knows how many hours doing this. So this is why we had to have her on the podcast. She's been doing great, being inspirational. And we love it. So I just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Like I said, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share some information and hopefully give a ray of hope. I mean, we are still filing lots of cases in our office. I'm helping to get a lot of people released from detention or detained by ICE. There are people on your side. I always like to tell people that there's a lot of us lawyers that are there working hard for you, and we're not going to stop. And so that people don't lose hope, because there are a lot of people in their corner still rooting for them and willing to help them.
Yeah, you're so right. And before we go, can you tell people how they can reach you on social media and like how they can contact you? Remember, y'all, like I said, if I'm not sure if you're taking on new cases right now, but immigration law is not just in the States, it's national. So if people want to contact you, and your office is plural, how can they contact you and reach out to you and get in touch?
I think the best way is probably our website. If you go on our website, you're going to see our phone number, and the website is www.casas, like houses in Spanish, casasimmigration.com. And then we're also on, I've got a TikTok channel, which is Abogada Carla. So Abogada is attorney in Spanish. On Facebook, you can look up just Casas Immigration, and you'll see our firm's Facebook page. I'll just give out our phone number too, if anyone wants to write it down. It's our Chicago number is the main number. It's 312-971-7221. We also have a YouTube channel where I do have a lot of videos there too, just typical know your rights stuff. If you're interested in learning more about immigration law, I try to it in English and Spanish. And the YouTube channel, I think, is also Casas Immigration. Sorry, I say I think because I have an amazing marketing assistant who does all of this right now. But I think it is Casas Immigration on YouTube as well. So you can definitely find it. We're everywhere at this point. And I do a lot of social media. I do a lot of videos. And like I said, for me, informing the community is so crucial right now. People need to know, and they need to be able to have a trusted source that they know the information is legit, because there's also a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of fake lawyers. And so you have to be really careful too where you get your information from nowadays.
And before you leave, actually, let's kind of address it right quick. What's something that who are people are looking for immigration lawyers, like what should they look out for with some red flags, and what should they really be concerned about when they're looking for immigration lawyer?
That's actually a great question. I love talking about that. I have a video on that as well. But I would say, number one, listen, like with everything in life, there's a lot of attorneys that do free consultations, but in the end, you get what you pay for. I'm not saying that that's the case with everybody, maybe, but generally speaking, these free consultations are very brief. They're not, a lot of times they're not even with an attorney. It might be with like one of the assistants. And they're not going to go into detail in your case. You need a thorough, especially right now when things are the way they are. I would recommend anyone who could be detained, who is undocumented. Right now is a good time to talk to a good attorney. Make sure that you have a plan, that you know what your options are. Are you eligible for bond if you're detained? And if you're not, you don't want to waste your money on that. Figure out something else, have a plan B. But I think number one is making sure that that this is a legit consultation. You're going to have to pay for it because, good things aren't free. But in the end, this is your future, right? So that's, I think, number one. I think another thing too, which we see a lot, we get a lot of clients that come to us from attorneys' offices where they have no one responds to them. Once they open the case, they're MIA, right? Nobody responds, nobody answers questions. I think it's important to ask the attorney during the consultation, what is the process like in the office? How long will it be before you respond to me? Who's going to respond to me if I have questions? You need to know what that process is like. Like in our office, all my assistants know they have to respond within 48 hours. I mean, obviously we can't respond immediately always because we're very, very busy, but every client will get a response, everyone. I don't ever want to leave a client hanging. So I think those are two important things, knowing, and then of course, even going back one step, make sure your attorney is actually an attorney. Nowadays, for immigration law, the attorney doesn't have to be licensed in the state where you're living. So for example, I represent clients all over the country. Immigration law is federal. So as long as the attorney is licensed in one of the 50 states, it could even actually be Puerto Rico as well, then that person is licensed to be able to practice immigration law. But you need to confirm, ask them what state they're licensed in. You go to Google, every state bar now has like a directory where you can easily look up that attorney. So I think that's also very important because especially in the Latin community, we have a lot of notaries, people who are notaries in the US and in Latin America, that means something very different, but they use it here to make people think that they have some special knowledge and they don't, because to be a notary in the US, you don't even have to have a high school diploma. It's a very different thing than being a notario in Latin America, right? But they know exactly what they're doing when they say I'm a notario, because people assume that they're well educated, they understand the law. So I think that is also important. And then, checking out I actually want to put out there, because this is a great place to search for immigration lawyers. I'm a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. That is the association for anyone. The way I say it is, if you're a serious immigration attorney, you're going to be a member of that organization. They update us on the daily with information. And they actually have a search. So when I can't handle a case and there's not a colleague I want to send them to, I will tell people, go to this website, and it's AILAlawyer.com. So AILA is AILA, American Immigration Lawyers Association, AILAlawyer.com. So there you can search based on zip code, on language, based on what type of case. Is it family immigration? Is it business immigration? And you'll have, at least this person is a member of that organization, which is not cheap to be a member. So they're taking it seriously. And, there's somebody who is really focused on immigration law. So that is probably my biggest tip. Use that. Don't just go to Google, because Google, there's so many lawyers are going to come up, right? But you want someone who's actually an expert in immigration law. Immigration law is all I do. That is all I do. I don't do anything else. And in the past, I've done corporate law, I've done labor law, I worked for the federal government. But at this point, immigration law is, trust me, that is keeping me busy enough. And I want to remain an expert in the law. And that the only way is to really focus on that, because there's so many changes that affect my clients. And so I have to kind of be up to date, every day. I'm like checking to see what happened today. So AILA Lawyer is a great place to start if you're looking for a lawyer.
Yeah, and I know if I've been busy, I know you've been busy 10 times, because I wake up at something brand new. So I definitely know you've been extremely busy. But hey, Abogada Casas, there you have it. Hey, if you missed all the information, don't worry. We're going to have all this information in the show's description. And if you're watching the show, we're going to have it on the ticker below. I want to apologize for the technical difficulties this time and then last time, but the message is out there. We're going to have it there. But if you have any questions, please reach out. I've heard if you can't find anybody. Was it again? AO Lawyers? Say it again? Once again?
It's AILA. So it's AILA. AILA lawyer.com.
All right.
AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association.
.com. There you have it. So, hey, Abogada Casas, thank you once again for coming on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
And before you go, can you just give us, like, in Espanol, just give us like one last encouraging message to the people who are going through this, the people who are being victims of this and being targeted unlawfully. Can you give like an encouraging message for them going forward?
Sure. A mi gente latina que están escuchando, les quiero decir que estamos acá, muchas personas apoyándolos. Yo me enfoco en casos de inmigración, estoy representando a personas detenidas, así que, y hay muchos abogados como yo, y muchas organizaciones de la comunidad, así que no están solos, estamos acá, esto pasará también.
All right. All right. There y'all have it. Hey, yo, thank you so much once again, Carla, for coming. Y'all really should follow her on TikTok. She is there faithfully. I don't know how she does it with that busy schedule, these updates. How does she does it? I have no idea. But hey, the story doesn't have to end just here. You can watch this episode and listen to it on our website at straightupshowpodcast.com. That's STR8upshowpodcast.com. There you can find this episode, her previous episode that got so much attention, and other cases about immigration. If you want to support the podcast, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/straightupshowpodcast 318. That's patreon.com/podcast 318. Until then, that's the end of our show. But there's only one rule to our show. You got to be
Straight up.
all right. See y'all soon.